Rain-slicked streets reflected the neon haze of the city like broken mirrors. The kind of night where every shadow seemed to have a heartbeat, every alley whispered secrets that could kill. Mara stood on the rooftop of an abandoned office building, her rifle cradled in her arms like a living thing. Her breath puffed in rhythmic clouds, dissolving into the cold night air. Below, the streets were crowded with the usual chaos. Cars honked impatiently, street vendors shouted over the drizzle, and pedestrians scurried under umbrellas that offered little protection. But Mara didn't see the crowd. She didn't see the wet asphalt or the flickering streetlights. She saw only one thing: the target. The man she was tracking moved with a confidence that betrayed no awareness of the danger looming above him. He was supposed to be untouchable, a ghost in the eyes of the law, untouchable even to the most skilled hunters. But Mara had been trained for months for this one shot. Every detail about him had been memorized. The way he held his hands, the slight limp in his left leg, the way his eyes darted at even the faintest hint of movement. She had rehearsed this moment in her mind countless times, each rehearsal more precise than the last. Still, every instinct in her body screamed caution. One mistake could not only ruin the shot but end her life. The wind tugged at her hair and clothes, whispering across the roof with an eerie insistence. Mara adjusted her scope, a delicate instrument of death, aligning it with the faint shimmer of the target's wristwatch, a detail so small, it would escape any casual observer, yet crucial for a clean, undetectable strike. Her fingers tightened around the trigger, feeling the cold steel against her skin, a pulse racing through her veins in perfect harmony with the rhythm of the city below. Every sound was amplified in the silence of her focus: the distant hum of a train, the drip of rain from a broken gutter, the low growl of a car engine. She exhaled slowly, forcing herself into a meditative calm, as if the world beyond her scope had ceased to exist. She remembered the warnings her mentors had given her. Impossible shot, they had said. Too far, too exposed, too risky. Mara had only smiled, an almost imperceptible curl of her lips. Impossible was a word meant for those who never dared to stretch beyond their limits. She had studied the trajectory, calculated the wind resistance, the sway of the building in the storm, even the heartbeat of the man below, because the slightest tremor could throw off everything. Every variable was accounted for, or so she thought. Her fingers itched to test her precision, yet patience was paramount. A rushed shot would betray her. Below, the man's phone vibrated in his hand. He glanced down at the screen, oblivious to the presence above him, unaware that his life balanced on a single, silent decision. Mara's mind was a matrix of calculations, each more intricate than the last. She visualized the path of the bullet, the arc it would trace, the exact moment gravity would pull it down, the instant it would strike without leaving a trace of who had fired. This was not just skill, this was art. And in the art of silence there could be no hesitation. Her pulse slowed as she aligned her breath with the rhythm of the storm, each exhale a tether between life and death. Time seemed to stretch. Seconds expanded into eternities as Mara waited. Her training had taught her to trust in her preparation. Yet even the most meticulous preparation could be undone by the unpredictable. A gust of wind shifted, threatening to alter her aim. She adjusted imperceptibly, the tiniest movement, the kind that could easily be mistaken for a twitch of the hand. Below, the man shifted his weight, unknowingly synchronizing with her calculation. Mara's mind clicked into place, every doubt erased, every hesitation gone. This was the moment she had been waiting for. The impossible was within reach. She exhaled, steadying herself for the shot. The crosshairs hovered over a faint glint on his wrist, her indicator of the perfect trajectory. Her finger found the trigger, a feather-light touch that felt like a whisper against steel. She waited one heartbeat longer, listening to the city around her, feeling the vibrations through the building, sensing every movement of the target. And then, in the silence of the storm, Mara pressed down. The rifle recoiled softly, the sound lost to the roar of thunder. Below, the man stumbled, clutching his chest, his phone slipping from his grasp. He fell to the wet asphalt with a finality that made the rain itself seem to mourn. Mara didn't move. She remained on the rooftop, heart hammering, as the city continued unaware of the silent act that had just occurred above them. The impossible shot had been made, the target neutralized, and yet not a single soul had seen her fire. It was a victory invisible to the world, but a victory nonetheless. She lowered her rifle slowly, allowing herself a brief, almost imperceptible smile. The rush of adrenaline was sharp, sweet, and fleeting. Every muscle in her body hummed with the satisfaction of mastery. In that moment she was both ghost and artist, unseen but undeniably present in the consequences of her action. The rain began to let up, leaving the streets slick and glistening in the dim glow of the neon lights. Mara slung her rifle over her shoulder and stepped back from the edge of the roof. Her mission had been completed with precision, yet the danger was far from over. There would be questions, investigations, and perhaps even revenge. But for now the impossible had been achieved. She melted into the shadows, a figure dissolving into the night, leaving only the silent proof of her existence, the fallen target below. The city would wake unaware, yet her mark had been made, perfect in its finality. And as she vanished into the darkness, Mara knew that the story of the impossible shot would be told for years, though the storyteller herself would remain forever unseen. Mara moved through the shadows of the city with the ease of someone who had lived her entire life in places unseen. The rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening with an oily sheen, reflections of neon signs fractured like shards of glass under her feet. Every sound was amplified in the silence that followed the storm. Distant sirens, the low hum of traffic, the occasional footstep echoing from a deserted alley. She didn't flinch, didn't pause. The city was alive, but it didn't concern her. She existed outside its rhythms, a predator who had mastered the art of invisibility. Her mission was complete, yet the real danger was just beginning. The target's fall had triggered a ripple Mara hadn't fully anticipated. Somewhere a phone had lit up, a message sent, a call made. The network of enemies she had been unaware of, or at least underestimated, was already stirring. Her instincts, honed through years of training and survival, told her to move, to vanish before the chaos found its source. She navigated narrow alleys and fire escapes, slipping through shadows like water flowing around stones, leaving no trace. She didn't need a map. She had memorized every rooftop, every hidden passage, every safe refuge in this part of the city. It was her playground and her battlefield. By the time she reached a safe house tucked between two crumbling warehouses, Mara's mind was already analyzing the consequences of her actions. The impossible shot had been executed flawlessly, yet there were always variables she couldn't control. Witnesses, cameras, unexpected shifts in the environment, all could turn perfection into disaster. She entered the safe house silently, shutting the door with the careful precision of someone who had counted every hinge, every lock. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint scent of machinery, a sterile environment designed for efficiency and secrecy. Here she could finally allow herself to think without immediate threat. She removed her jacket, letting it fall into a chair with a soft thud, and placed the rifle carefully on a reinforced table. Each component of the weapon was cleaned and inspected, a ritual she performed as much for focus as for maintenance. Her reflection in the small, grimy window caught her attention. Eyes sharp and alert, jaw tight with determination, and a shadow of satisfaction mingled with caution. Mara was aware that the impossible shot would bring attention, not necessarily from the authorities, but from those who had a vested interest in her failure. And when those forces moved, they would move quickly, with lethal precision. She couldn't afford to rest, not even for a moment. The room was quiet, save for the soft hum of an old heater and the occasional drip from a leaky pipe. Mara pulled out a small tablet from her backpack, its screen illuminating her focused expression. She scanned communications, encrypted messages, and surveillance feeds that had been waiting for her return. Among the usual chatter, a single encrypted notification caught her eye. The message was simple, but its implications were chilling. They know. Prepare for extraction. Mara's pulse quickened. Whoever they were, they had already traced her activity, pinpointing her location. It wasn't a trap yet, but the net was tightening. She would have to act, and quickly. Mara reviewed her escape routes meticulously, mapping every alley, rooftop, and underground passage she might use. Time was a variable now, and she knew the importance of every second. Her training had prepared her for these scenarios: extraction under pressure, evasion against superior numbers, and the mental discipline to remain calm when all else seemed chaos. She checked her gear once more: concealed blades, smoke grenades, extra ammunition, and a small but potent supply of EMP devices capable of disabling electronic surveillance temporarily. Preparation was her armor, patience her weapon. The safe house, though secure, had one vulnerability: the main access corridor was exposed from above. Mara positioned herself near the reinforced window, scanning the surrounding rooftops for movement. Shadows flickered in the periphery, subtle yet deliberate. Her heart rate remained steady, her breathing controlled. Experience taught her that fear was a tool, but panic was a liability. Every second counted. And then she saw it: a figure on a distant rooftop, barely perceptible in the darkness, scanning the streets below. Mara's instincts screamed recognition. This wasn't random, it was calculated. She was being observed. Without hesitation, Mara activated a small device near her feet. A low hum filled the room as the EMP pulse disabled local surveillance systems, plunging the immediate area into temporary digital silence. The figure on the rooftop flickered briefly in their scope, confusion crossing their movements before Mara slipped into the shadows. She moved like smoke through the cracks of the city, every step deliberate, every motion silent. The extraction point was only a few blocks away, but the journey would test her skill and resolve. One wrong move, one slip in focus, and the hunters waiting in the dark could end her story before it had fully begun. As she approached the extraction site, Mara's mind raced with scenarios. She considered contingencies, escape angles and fallback positions, all while maintaining the external calm of a ghost moving through a living city. Rain had returned in a light drizzle, adding an eerie rhythm to the night and masking her approach. She reached the rendezvous, a seemingly abandoned subway entrance, and crouched in the shadows, listening. Footsteps approached, careful, measured, and deliberate. Mara recognized the rhythm, the weight distribution, the subtle cadence that marked trained professionals. She remained still, heart steady, waiting for the precise moment. The extraction team emerged from the darkness. 3 figures equipped and ready, blending seamlessly into the night. No words were exchanged. Mara led the way through the labyrinth of tunnels beneath the city, each step calculated, each corner navigated with the expertise of someone who had spent years mastering the terrain. The impossible shot had been only the beginning. Now she had to survive the aftermath, ensuring that her presence remained untraceable while neutralizing any threats that might arise. The tunnels twisted and turned, a maze that had claimed many who dared enter unprepared. Mara's instincts guided her, every sound and vibration catalogued, every shadow evaluated. Time was no longer linear, it was a series of calculated decisions and reactions, each critical to survival. By the time they emerged on the outskirts of the city, the first light of dawn was breaking. Mara's extraction team led her to a waiting vehicle, inconspicuous but fast, capable of vanishing without a trace. She settled into the back seat, her body tense but controlled. The city receded behind them, its chaos and oblivion fading into the distance. Mara allowed herself a moment of reflection. The impossible shot had been executed perfectly, yet the danger was far from over. Every action had consequences, and every consequence demanded vigilance. The world outside her window was waking, unaware of the deadly dance that had unfolded above its streets. Mara's mind, however, was already focused on the next phase. Targets, threats, and unknown variables awaited her attention. She had proven her precision, her skill, and her resolve. Yet the story was far from complete. In the shadows of the city, unseen forces were aligning, and the impossible was only the first of many tests. Mara's journey had just begun. The extraction had provided temporary safety, but the hunt, silent, invisible, relentless, would continue. She had fired the shot that no one could see, but now she had to navigate the world that had just begun to notice her. Every step, every decision would be critical. Mara's story and the impossible were far from finished. The vehicle hummed along deserted highways, its engine a quiet whisper against the awakening cityscape. Mara's eyes scanned the horizon through the rain-specked window, noting every detail: the flicker of streetlights, the distant hum of machinery, the occasional passerby moving with oblivious purpose. Her mind, however, was far from the mundane scene outside. Every fiber of her being remained alert, every sense attuned to possible threats. The impossible shot had drawn attention, subtle yet undeniable. Somewhere in the shadows, unseen eyes were tracking her movements, and she would not allow herself to be caught unprepared. Her extraction team, a silent trio of operatives she barely knew, communicated with nods and gestures, an unspoken language forged through necessity. Mara had little patience for conversation, especially when danger lingered close. She checked her gear again, the rifle now cleaned and stowed, knives compact yet deadly, grenades designed to disrupt vision and electronics, and a small collection of tracking and counter-surveillance devices. Each tool had a purpose, each piece meticulously maintained. Her preparation was a barrier against unpredictability, yet she knew that even perfection could be challenged. As the vehicle veered off the main highway, descending into an industrial district abandoned by most legitimate enterprises, Mara's mind replayed the events leading up to the shot. The target had been precise in his movements, almost arrogant in his confidence. His fall, silent and unobserved by the crowds below, had triggered a chain reaction she hadn't fully predicted. Messages encrypted and unencrypted alike, from contacts she didn't know she had, began converging into her secure feeds. Mara scrolled through them, recognizing patterns, decoding signals and isolating threats. The city itself had become a grid of potential danger points, each intersection a possible trap, each shadow a potential observer. The vehicle stopped in a narrow alleyway between two towering warehouses. The extraction team signaled silently, and Mara slipped out, her movements fluid, silent. The rain had returned, a fine mist this time, leaving the concrete slick beneath her feet. She followed the team through the maze of shipping containers and derelict machinery, each step deliberate. The extraction point was a nondescript warehouse, its interior dimly lit and reinforced against intrusion. Inside, monitors displayed live feeds from various points across the city, though many were momentarily blank. Her EMP pulse had left temporary gaps in their surveillance, a crucial advantage. Mara allowed herself a brief moment of reprieve, but only a brief one. She reviewed her intel. The target she had neutralized had been connected to a network far more extensive than she initially believed. Syndicates, corrupt officials, rogue operatives, each had reason to notice a sudden disappearance. Her mission had been surgical, flawless, yet the ripples it created were unpredictable. Someone, somewhere, was piecing together her involvement. She was no longer just an observer in this deadly game. She was a participant, and a highly visible one in the wrong eyes. A sudden alert on one of the monitors caught her attention. A figure was moving across the city, methodical, scanning rooftops, observing the aftermath of her actions. Mara recognized the style immediately: trained, professional, lethal. Whoever this was, they were not acting alone, but their presence indicated a direct interest in her. The extraction team noticed her focus, understanding the significance without words. Mara made her decision instantly. They would relocate, move to a secondary safe house before the pursuers could identify patterns in their escape. Every second counted. Hesitation would be fatal. The route Mara chose was indirect, winding through industrial corridors, subterranean passages, and abandoned maintenance tunnels. Each segment had been memorized, mapped in her mind from countless prior reconstructions. Yet she remained vigilant. The impossible shot had proven her skill, but it had also made her a target. Every shadow, every movement outside the perimeter, was a potential threat. She adapted her pace, blending with the environment, altering patterns to mislead anyone who might be tracking them. Her training was not just physical but psychological, a mental chess game against unseen opponents. By the time they reached the secondary safe house, the first hints of dawn filtered through cracks in the roof. The building was a modest structure, reinforced for security, with walls designed to absorb sound and obscure presence. Mara took position near a reinforced window, surveying the surroundings while the extraction team secured the perimeter. Her mind was already calculating next steps: the need for communication with higher command, the analysis of new threats, and contingency planning in case the pursuers escalated their efforts. The city below continued its morning routines, unaware of the deadly game unfolding above and beneath its streets. Inside the safe house, Mara reviewed the network of contacts she had established over years of clandestine operations. Some were allies, some informants, and some potential liabilities. Every connection required assessment, every communication needed verification. She activated secure channels, cross-referencing intel, identifying anomalies, and isolating patterns that indicated hostile intent. One message, subtle yet deliberate, caught her attention: "You're being watched. The next move will define survival." Mara's eyes narrowed. The impossible shot had been only the opening act. The real challenge was unfolding now. She needed to anticipate, to outmaneuver, and to survive while remaining invisible. Mara's body remained tense, a coiled spring ready to react. She prepared her weapons, tested communication devices, and rehearsed escape routes. She knew the importance of precision not only in shooting but in every decision she made. The impossible shot had proven her skill, but the consequences demanded more than skill alone. They demanded foresight, adaptability, and unyielding focus. Mara understood that the city itself had become a chessboard, and each movement she made would ripple through unseen networks. The stakes were life itself, and failure was not an option. Hours passed in silence, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city and the occasional drip of water from a leaky roof. Mara remained alert, her senses attuned to every subtle change in the environment. She reviewed the intel repeatedly, recalculated possible threats, and refined contingency plans. Each thought, each action was part of a larger strategy. The impossible shot had been achieved, but the aftermath was a new battlefield, one where invisibility and precision were as deadly as any weapon. Mara's mind was a fortress, her focus a shield, and her resolve unbreakable. As the sun rose higher, casting light over the industrial district, Mara made her decision. She would move again, stay ahead of the pursuers, and continue the delicate dance of predator and prey. The impossible shot had marked her as a master, but mastery alone would not guarantee survival. She gathered her gear, signaled to the extraction team, and prepared for the next phase of the mission. Outside, the city was waking, oblivious to the silent war that had taken place and was continuing. Mara stepped into the morning light, ready to navigate the dangers ahead, unseen, precise, and deadly. The story of the impossible shot was far from over. It was only the beginning. The city hummed with a deceptive calm as Mara moved through its winding alleys, her senses hyper-alert to every sound, every flicker of movement. Dawn had broken fully, but the morning light did nothing to dispel the shadows that clung to corners, rooftops, and abandoned lots. Mara knew the danger was no longer abstract. Someone had marked her presence. The impossible shot had left ripples that reached far beyond the target she had eliminated. Every movement she made was now being observed by trained eyes, calculating, predicting, and waiting for the slightest lapse in her precision. Mara's extraction team had led her to a secondary safehouse, but she knew they could not stay there indefinitely. Surveillance drones, patrols, and informants could converge at any moment. She studied the neighborhood meticulously, noting entry points, possible egress routes, and the line of sight from adjacent buildings. Her training had taught her that survival relied not just on skill but on understanding the environment as a weapon itself. Each alley could hide a sniper, each rooftop could conceal observers. She advanced cautiously, shifting shadows to cover her approach, making herself indistinguishable from the urban decay around her. Inside the safehouse, Mara reviewed her data. The target she had eliminated was part of a network far larger than she had initially assessed. Corruption, crime syndicates, rogue operatives, every faction had an interest in her movements. Her encrypted feeds displayed anomalies, messages that weren't from any known contacts, patterns that suggested surveillance had been planted within her network. Someone, somewhere was trying to predict her next move. Mara's mind worked like a precision instrument, isolating signals, cross-referencing timestamps, and identifying inconsistencies. Every anomaly was a potential threat, every pattern a clue. As she analyzed the information, the building itself betrayed subtle signs of intrusion. A displaced object, a faint scuff on the floor, a shadow cast differently in the morning sun. Mara's instincts flared. Someone had been here. The intruder had not completed their objective. They had not found her, but the breach indicated intent. Mara prepared immediately. She checked her weapons, her rifle, knives, grenades, and electronic countermeasures. She memorized escape routes, noting the safest and fastest ways to disappear into the city's labyrinth. The impossible shot had drawn attention, and now the hunt was escalating. Mara moved through the corridors silently, her eyes scanning every nook and cranny. She had no intention of confronting the intruder directly unless necessary. Avoidance was often more lethal than engagement, allowing her to control the battlefield on her terms. Her extraction team flanked her, moving in perfect synchrony, trained to anticipate threats without verbal communication. Every sound, every vibration was catalogued in real time. The city around them was alive with activity, yet they remained invisible, shadows moving against a living canvas. Hours passed without incident, but Mara knew the peace was temporary. Her movements were tracked and her pursuers were patient, calculating. She decided to create a diversion, a series of controlled disruptions designed to confuse, mislead, and delay those hunting her. Smoke grenades, electronic pulses, and carefully orchestrated noise were employed to create false trails. Mara watched from a rooftop as the first response units arrived, methodical in their search but unable to pinpoint her presence. The impossible shot had been precise, but survival required layers of strategy, deception, and misdirection. The diversion worked, but it was not a permanent solution. Mara knew the next phase would require direct engagement. Intelligence had indicated that a specialized strike team was converging on her location. Their expertise would match hers in skill, but not in anticipation. Mara began planning. She mapped choke points, escape routes, and kill zones, preparing for a confrontation that could not be avoided indefinitely. Every decision was a balance between risk and necessity, precision and adaptability. She understood that the impossible shot had set events into motion that demanded her full attention, every ounce of skill she possessed, and the ruthless execution of strategy. As night fell, Mara moved toward the first predetermined engagement zone, a deserted industrial complex on the city outskirts. The building was abandoned but structurally intact, with multiple floors, stairwells, and hidden passageways. It offered perfect opportunities for ambush, retreat, and observation. Mara positioned herself strategically, observing the approaches from multiple angles, noting cover, sightlines, and potential escape paths. Her attackers would have to navigate this environment, and she intended to make every step costly. The impossible shot had been the beginning. Now she was preparing for the dance that would define her survival. Hours later, movement on the periphery signaled the arrival of the strike team. Mara watched silently, her pulse controlled, her breathing even. The team approached cautiously, professional in demeanor, but unaware of the traps awaiting them. Mara had anticipated their route, leaving behind false signals, misleading sounds, and controlled disruptions that forced the team to second-guess every movement. The engagement had not yet begun, but she was already shaping the battlefield to her advantage. The impossible shot had marked her as a master, but mastery alone would not suffice against opponents trained to adapt and overcome. The first contact occurred quietly, almost imperceptibly. A single operative stumbled into a trap designed to slow their advance, a rigged mechanism that released debris and obscured vision. Mara remained unseen, her focus absolute, observing how her adversaries reacted. The strike team was skilled, moving with coordination and precision, but they were reacting to a battlefield she had already manipulated. Each action she had taken in preparation was now influencing the outcome, forcing the team to expend resources, time, and focus just to navigate her controlled chaos. The impossible shot had been silent. This confrontation would be strategic, psychological, and lethal. Mara's engagement was deliberate and precise. She moved from shadow to shadow, exploiting the terrain, leveraging obstacles, and striking with deadly efficiency when necessary. Each movement was calculated, each decision weighing risk against opportunity. The strike team, despite their training, began to falter under the pressure of her calculated disruptions. Mara's presence was felt but not seen, her actions shaping the battlefield without revealing her location. The impossible shot had demonstrated her skill. Now her strategy and adaptability were proving indispensable. By the time the first confrontation concluded, Mara had neutralized key members of the strike team without direct exposure. The remaining operatives retreated, confused and disoriented, their coordination disrupted. Mara had not only survived but had manipulated the engagement to her advantage, turning a potential threat into a controlled outcome. She did not linger to celebrate. Time was a factor, and the city was still alive with dangers unseen. The impossible shot had been a singular act of precision. This engagement had been a testament to her mastery of strategy, observation, and survival. As dawn approached once more, Mara withdrew from the industrial complex, moving with the fluidity of someone who had mastered invisibility in a hostile environment. She signaled her extraction team, and together they vanished into the city's labyrinthine streets. The strike team, though formidable, would regroup, but Mara had already anticipated their response. Each engagement was a lesson, each confrontation an opportunity to refine tactics, and each step a reaffirmation of her survival instinct. The impossible shot had been only the beginning, and Mara knew that the challenges ahead would require the full measure of her skill, precision, and cunning. The city's rhythm had shifted in Mara's absence. By the time night fell again, the streets bore a subtle tension that only those attuned to danger could perceive. Every flicker of light, every shadow, seemed alive with possibility, each corner a potential threat. Mara moved like a ghost, silent and deliberate, observing from the rooftops before descending into the narrow alleys below. Her extraction team followed her movements without question. She led and they adapted, moving as a single unit. The impossible shot had drawn attention, but her ability to remain unseen had ensured that her hunters still remained largely unaware of her exact location. Mara's mind was already mapping the next phase of her mission. The strike team she had neutralized earlier was only the beginning. Intelligence suggested that a higher echelon of adversaries, those with deeper resources and connections, was now mobilizing. These were not simply operatives, they were tacticians, analysts, and assassins operating at the intersection of skill and influence. Mara knew that she could not simply rely on her marksmanship or stealth alone. She would need to anticipate strategies, disrupt communication, and control information flows to stay ahead. Every detail of the city, from rooftop vents to subway tunnels, became an instrument in her calculated orchestration of survival. As she moved through the industrial sector, Mara reviewed her previous engagements, analyzing successes and minor oversights. The impossible shot had proven her precision, but these recent confrontations had revealed another crucial element: patience. Her adversaries were skilled, and any haste could be fatal. Mara slowed her pace, allowing herself time to observe patterns in the environment, identify possible ambush points, and anticipate how her pursuers might react. Every second of observation increased her understanding of the battlefield, allowing her to adapt before threats materialized. Her target for the evening was a small, heavily guarded communications hub believed to be feeding live intelligence to those hunting her. Mara's approach was cautious. The building was fortified, cameras scanning every entry point, guards patrolling the perimeter. She had to be invisible, precise, and deliberate. Using a combination of shadows, rooftop access, and tactical timing, Mara bypassed the first layer of security. She avoided cameras with calculated movements, disabled motion sensors with improvised jamming devices, and marked safe pathways for her extraction team. Every action was choreographed like a deadly ballet, designed to achieve maximum efficiency with minimal exposure. Once inside the hub, Mara moved swiftly. Her objective was not confrontation but information. She located the central server room, bypassed the electronic locks, and connected her secure decryption devices. Data streamed across her portable console: encrypted communication logs, surveillance feeds, and operational directives. Mara's eyes scanned rapidly, analyzing patterns, identifying hierarchies, and isolating key figures orchestrating the hunt. Each piece of intelligence expanded the battlefield in her mind, revealing connections that were invisible to those who underestimated her. The impossible shot had been a singular act of precision, but now she wielded information as a weapon, shaping outcomes from the shadows. Suddenly, a subtle vibration beneath her feet caught her attention. A pressure-sensitive trap had been triggered. Mara froze, analyzing the pattern, a silent warning mechanism, likely designed to alert others of intrusion. She disengaged it with practiced hands, neutralizing the threat without triggering alarms. Her pulse remained steady. The danger had been anticipated, yet she remained vigilant. Every aspect of the hub had been designed to be lethal to those who underestimated it, but Mara's preparation allowed her to move with control, turning potential disaster into tactical advantage. Extraction would be critical. Mara signaled her team, and they prepared for the return journey through the same perilous paths. She established counter-surveillance measures to mislead any monitoring devices, leaving behind a trail designed to confuse and misdirect. Smoke dispersal systems, delayed electronic pulses, and strategically placed noise devices ensured that anyone tracking their movements would be forced to second-guess every reading. Mara's mastery of both strategy and environment allowed her to create a battlefield she controlled from every angle, a silent dominion where invisibility and precision were paramount. As the team exited the hub, Mara's attention shifted to higher-altitude vantage points. The city's skyline was littered with potential threats: sniper positions, drone surveillance, and electronic interceptors. Mara adapted, moving from shadow to shadow, avoiding predictable paths, and using natural cover to obscure movement. She observed her surroundings like a predator, noting any unusual activity, anticipating responses, and preparing contingencies. The impossible shot had demonstrated her skill, but these maneuvers proved her ability to manipulate a complex environment in real time, controlling both perception and action. Hours into the mission, Mara reached a safe rooftop to reassess. Below, the city sprawled with unknowing inhabitants, a living tapestry of light, motion, and vulnerability. Mara's extraction team remained vigilant, scanning potential threat vectors, yet she alone could process the intricate web of intelligence flowing through her systems. The communications data retrieved from the hub provided critical insight. Her adversaries were organizing into coordinated cells, each tasked with monitoring potential targets and neutralizing threats. Their efficiency was formidable, but Mara's advantage lay in unpredictability, speed, and calculated disruption. As night deepened, Mara formulated her next phase. The pursuit was no longer just about survival. It was about dominance in a silent war fought with shadows, information, and precision. Each move she made would ripple through her adversaries' operations, forcing them to expend energy and resources, often on false leads. Her strategy was simple in theory but complex in execution: strike decisively, vanish without trace, and let the chaos she created become a shield. The impossible shot had been a catalyst, a singular moment that revealed her skill. Now she was shaping the battlefield continuously, a presence felt but rarely seen, a force that transformed anticipation into control. Suddenly, an unexpected variable appeared. A lone operative, highly trained, had discovered one of the false trails. Mara observed from above, analyzing movement patterns, timing, and tactical decisions. The operative approached cautiously, scanning for threats, unaware that Mara's manipulations had already predetermined his actions. She allowed him to advance, maintaining invisibility while collecting data on response behavior. The impossible shot had demonstrated accuracy, but now she wielded foresight as her weapon, controlling engagement before it began. When the operative reached the intended location, Mara executed a subtle trap, a controlled diversion of light and sound, disorienting him and forcing retreat without direct confrontation. She had neutralized a potential threat without being seen, turning an encounter that could have escalated into a lethal engagement into a strategic advantage. Her extraction team moved silently, securing the perimeter and reinforcing safety protocols. Every step, every action, was part of a broader plan to ensure survival while maximizing the impact of each operation. By the time dawn approached, Mara had returned to a secondary safehouse, her team intact and the mission accomplished. The communications data she had extracted provided actionable intelligence, the hierarchy of adversaries, operational timelines, and potential future targets. Mara reviewed the information meticulously, preparing for the next engagement. The impossible shot had been the opening act of a narrative that was rapidly expanding, each phase demanding more skill, strategy, and anticipation. She knew that the higher echelon would respond with increased resources and determination, but Mara's preparation, adaptability, and relentless focus ensured she remained several steps ahead. As the first light of morning filtered through the windows, Mara allowed herself a brief moment to reflect. The city below remained oblivious to the silent war being waged within its confines. The impossible shot had marked her as a master of precision, but mastery alone would not guarantee survival in the days ahead. Intelligence, strategy, and anticipation were now as crucial as skill. Mara's mind remained active, mapping possibilities, calculating outcomes, and preparing contingencies. Each move she made would ripple through the operations of those hunting her, turning their pursuit into a series of controlled vulnerabilities. Mara's extraction team prepared for redeployment, and she signaled readiness. The next phase of the mission was already forming in her mind: neutralize the emerging threats, gather actionable intelligence, and ensure survival while remaining invisible. The impossible shot had proven her capabilities, but the evolving battlefield demanded continuous adaptation. Mara stepped into the city once more, silent, precise, and deadly, a master of shadows and strategy. The hunt was ongoing, the stakes escalating, and the story of the impossible shot was far from over. It had transformed into a complex web of pursuit, strategy, and survival, with Mara at its center, shaping every move from the shadows. The night sky was a blanket of shadows as Mara moved silently across the cityscape. Her every step was deliberate, calculated, and measured. The impossible shot had changed everything, and now she was no longer merely surviving, she was orchestrating the battlefield in her favor. The communications data she had extracted in the previous mission had revealed a far-reaching network of operatives converging on her location. These were no ordinary pursuers, they were highly trained, disciplined, and relentless. Mara knew that staying in one place too long was not an option. She had to remain mobile, unpredictable, and constantly ahead of those tracking her. The secondary safehouse she and her extraction team had occupied was already compromised, though the breach had gone unnoticed. Mara's instincts told her that the operatives were watching, analyzing patterns, anticipating her next move. She moved like a shadow through the alleys, her team following without sound, each member a silent extension of her will. The city itself had become a weapon and a shield, its labyrinthine streets providing both concealment and opportunity. Every doorway, every rooftop, every narrow passage was part of a strategy that Mara was weaving in real time. Mara's objective for the night was a high-security facility on the outskirts of the city. Intelligence suggested that this location housed advanced tracking systems capable of pinpointing her exact coordinates. If left operational, the facility could mobilize reinforcements with surgical precision. Mara had no intention of confrontation unless absolutely necessary. Her goal was infiltration, neutralization of the tracking systems, and extraction of critical data that could give her a tactical advantage. She surveyed the perimeter from an adjacent rooftop, noting guard rotations, camera angles, and the subtle patterns of patrol dogs. Every observation was a calculation, every detail a potential advantage. Using the cover of darkness and an intricate understanding of the city's architecture, Mara descended silently to the facility's roof. She moved with the fluidity of someone who had become one with the shadows, avoiding laser sensors, disabling electronic locks, and creating pathways for her team. Her extraction team mirrored her movements flawlessly, demonstrating the trust and coordination built through countless operations. The impossible shot had earned her reputation, but reputation alone would not win this battle. Precision, strategy, and timing would. Inside the facility, Mara located the central tracking hub. Her hands moved over the control panels with practiced ease, bypassing encryption protocols, disabling security redundancies, and extracting operational schematics. The data revealed the scope of the network hunting her. Multiple strike teams, layered surveillance grids, and contingency plans designed to predict and intercept her every move. Mara's mind processed the information rapidly, creating a mental map of potential threats, escape routes, and strategic vulnerabilities. Every detail was critical. Every oversight could be fatal. Suddenly, an alert blinked on one of the monitors, a silent alarm triggered by a pressure-sensitive floor panel. Mara froze, analyzing the situation with acute focus. The operative who had tripped the alarm had not seen her, but the system had noted her presence. She adapted instantly, rerouting her extraction plan, creating decoy signals, and manipulating the facility's internal systems to mislead any approaching threats. The impossible shot had been about precision. Now her survival relied on adaptability, control, and anticipation. Mara's extraction team prepared for immediate withdrawal. Smoke dispersal systems obscured vision, and carefully timed electronic pulses disrupted communication between the facility's operatives. Mara led the team through hidden corridors and maintenance shafts, avoiding detection while creating controlled chaos for those monitoring remotely. Every step was part of a meticulously orchestrated plan designed to achieve maximum impact with minimal exposure. The impossible shot had been a singular moment of brilliance. These maneuvers demonstrated her ability to control an entire environment strategically. As they emerged onto the city streets, Mara's attention shifted to higher vantage points. Surveillance drones patrolled the skies, scanning for irregularities, while rooftop snipers watched predetermined lines of sight. Mara moved with fluid precision, timing each movement to coincide with natural shadows, city noise, and electronic interference she had deployed. She observed the reactions of her pursuers, noting response patterns, speed of deployment, and decision-making processes. Every observation added to her understanding of their tactics, creating opportunities for future engagement and disruption. Hours passed with Mara navigating the city's maze-like streets. The extracted data provided actionable intelligence. Locations of strike teams, communication channels, and potential vulnerabilities in the operational network. Mara began planning preemptive measures, setting traps and diversions to delay, disorient, and destabilize her pursuers. Her strategy was no longer reactive. It was proactive, transforming the city into a chessboard where every move she made dictated the responses of those seeking her. The impossible shot had been the opening move in a deadly game, and Mara was now several steps ahead. Unexpectedly, a new threat emerged. A rival operative highly skilled and known for unpredictable tactics had detected one of